Hello, everybody. It is an honor and pleasure to participate as the conference's title business sponsor. Stoll Reeves looks forward to hosting you this evening at the reception. Come find out why John Ludger thinks it's legendary. Anyway, but first, I get to do something fun. I get to introduce today's keynote speaker, Miss Shelley Zimmer. Ms. Zimmer has a really big job. From her office in Boise, she leads environmental strategy for Hewlett-Packard's printing supplies business worldwide. She also heads Hewlett-Packard's Planet Partners recycling program. Her primary interest is to figure out how to get consumers interested in purchasing products that have more, not less, not fewer, environmental attributes. Before joining Hewlett-Packard, she worked with another big fish. She worked for Nike within its Sustainable Design Innovation Group. Robert, where are you? Shelley also shares some of your pain trying to help us environmental professionals out. She serves on the steering committee with the Boise chapter of the NEWEC. Finally, she's really smart. She holds an MBA and a master's in environmental management from Duke University, where she studied environmental marketing. So it is with joy that I welcome and encourage you to welcome Ms. Shelley Zimmer to the stage.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Well, as Jeff mentioned, I did attend Duke University at the School of the Environment and the Business School. And while I was there, it was always really striking to me to travel between the two classrooms. I'd be going to one class, and there would be people wearing high heels and Cole Haans, a little buttoned up. And then I'd go to the other classroom, and there would be people kind of hanging out in Tevas and Birkenstocks. But what I learned from this experience is, as I learned to travel between these two groups, is how important it was to begin to bridge those two organizations. And it was, in one way I could feel like an outsider, if you will, someone who feels a little bit out of the beaten track because I was always going between these two groups. But in another way, what a great opportunity. For you, perhaps you feel the same way. Perhaps you're perceived in some cases as the person who's the environmentalist among the business colleagues that you have. And perhaps you're seen as the business person among the environmental teams. So it's this bridging that I think is the key opportunity. I think you were mentioning it earlier today too, when you were talking about how there's a perceived dichotomy between these two groups, between jobs and environment, and between business and environment. And it's our role and our great opportunity to think about how we can bring those together, to share a common language, to establish common goals, to think about different ways that we can help to bring these groups together. I perceive my role, if you will, at Hewlett-Packard as being a translator, to think about how to do this work, to bring out the tree hugger side of myself when I'm in the business meetings, and to bring out the business side of myself when I'm amongst environmental colleagues. And so today what I'd like to do is to share with you 4 tools that we've used at Hewlett-Packard in doing this work. 4 keys, if you will. And I'd like to share them with you here. They are understanding and addressing customer needs, commitments, using environmental sustainability as an innovation driver, and finally, initiating and establishing partnerships. The first, understanding and addressing customer needs. We all do this in our work as business leaders, whether it be one-on-one conversations with our customers or whether it be looking at trends in environmental research. In my role at Hewlett-Packard, I'm always looking at what's going on in the food industry and other trends outside of my own technology industry. For example, one thing we've noticed is that in the food industry, about 75% of US consumers in the past year have purchased organic food. That's really interesting to me because it tends to predict what's going to happen in the technology industry in a couple of years. And so When today I'm looking at about 25% of our consumers being interested in environmental attributes, I'm thinking about, how is that going to get and when is that going to shift to 75%? And in some ways it is, because in our enterprise business for our large global customers, about 80% of our requests for proposals contain environmental criteria in them. Customers specifically seeking HP's performance on environmental criteria. You know, one of the things I remember when I was looking at some focus groups, when I was watching some focus groups, is I hear some of the stories and I think about how some of those, what some of those requests were from customers. I remember a woman in China who was saying that she was interested in recycling her print cartridges, but she didn't know how to access a program for recycling print cartridges in her area in China. And so she was stockpiling print cartridges in her house because she was waiting to find a solution for them. I also remember a small business customer in Germany. And this person was talking about how his company, his small business office, has a contest to find out who can use their paper most efficiently. And so at the end of the day, if someone has wasted paper by printing on one side of the page or printing out a lot of ads and different jazz from the internet, then they pile that paper up on the desk and they're comparing across each other's desks visually to see who has saved the most paper, who has printed the most efficiently that day. Now, when we hear this information, it becomes our role as translators to think about how we change that feedback that we get from customers into features in our products or into programs that we can offer to our customers. So we have developed over time a feature like HP Smart Print, which is a feature that saves paper when printing from the internet. It helps you cut off all of those ads and the other excess material that you really don't want when you're printing from the internet. We also have a feature called HP Auto On and Auto Off. HP Auto On and Auto Off is a feature that helps save energy when you're not using your printer. It turns the printer off automatically so you don't have to remember to go hit that button before you leave the office for the day, or if you're going to be away for a few hours. And also, for that woman in China, we actually have a recycling program for our print cartridge supplies available in more than 50 countries in the world. It's a free and convenient recycling option for customers, if they know about it, to recycle their print cartridges with HP's Planet Partners program. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that later. So let's all take our mission as translators to think about how we can take this feedback that we get from our customers and incorporate it into features or programs. The next tool that I'd like to share with you is making a commitment and sticking to it. In my company at Hewlett-Packard, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard were two key leaders who, from the beginning of our founding of our company, said that they wanted to make sure that they knew what the mission of the company was, that they expanded the definition of what a company's mission was, that it wasn't just to make money, but that it was also to think more broadly about what the impact of the business was on its larger community. Dave Packard said, management has a responsibility to its employees, to its customers, and it has a responsibility to the community at large. You know, this is one of those quotes that kind of you've heard around when you're at HP, but as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought, well, I better look up when they said this quote. And I thought, well, it must have been in the 60s because that's when environmental responsibility and sustainability kind of first started to grow. But they actually said this in 1941. And I thought that was really striking that way back then they were thinking about how to define their business and the mission of their company. And that thinking, that commitment, really lives on today. I remember when we were designing a product called the DeskJet 2345. This is a small consumer product for the home. Just kind of a standard, very affordable printer. And I remember that one engineer had this crazy, kind of harebrained idea. She said, well, could we put recycled content into that product? We'd never done that before, and we didn't know. And even then, she said, and also, how much recycled content could we get into this thing? So the design team started working on it. And they ran into some issues. And they had to really commit to this mission of putting recycled content into products. The issues were, for example, that when you use recycled plastic in a printing product, the plastic is a little bit more brittle. It doesn't have quite the same engineering qualities as a standard virgin plastic. And so they had to change the design of the product in order to overcome the brittle nature of the material. The other issue was that it's difficult to get the same color palette that you have with a virgin plastic. With a virgin plastic, you just pick the color off the shelf. But with a recycled plastic, you have to start with a very dark material because typically recycled plastics that we use in our business are really dark or black. And so they had to overcome those issues, and they got to 83% recycled plastic. The product sold well, and it did very well in the market. And it was marketed on not only its useful material qualities, but also its environmental features. But while we were getting feedback and while we were looking at success in our desk jet, we got feedback of quite another kind. On July 28, 2009, Greenpeace hosted a demonstration on the roof of our building. And they painted huge letters that said hazardous products across our CEO's roof. Their concern was around the use of PVC and BFR in our products. And so while we had been feeling very successful about the recycled content that we were working on and supplies recycling, they were concerned about quite a different issue. And so one of our reactions could have been to batten down the hatches, close the doors, and seal ourselves in. But instead, what we decided to do was to engage with them. And we started learning more about what their concerns were, and we started thinking about how we could adjust our materials to accommodate those. I'm pleased to say that today we've introduced several computing products that are PVC and BFR free, and we've also introduced some of the world's first PVC-free printers. And it took commitment from us to think about how we can react to Greenpeace's comments, and it took Greenpeace's commitment to tell us that they were concerned about these issues. Now, we've been talking about commitment on a company level and a nonprofit organization, but another type of commitment that we're thinking about is industry level. And again, I can look at what's going on in the food industry and in other industries in order to think about what might predict what's going to happen in the technology industry. You are probably familiar with the USDA organic label, which is a label that was established with a series of meetings and collaboration among industry members, from nonprofits to manufacturing to other folks concerned about defining what justifies or what constitutes an organic food. And these types of standards or this type of definition is really helpful for companies who are striving to meet organic, to state that they are organic. They want to make sure that there's a level playing field. Similarly, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition in August of this year just introduced a standard for apparel called the Sustainability Index. And this is a standard that says that in order for a product to be considered sustainable, it has to meet certain criteria. And this index helps companies, suppliers, manufacturers work together to achieve common goals around reducing overall environmental impact. Similarly, in our industry, again, following what's going on in these other industries, we have a standard called EPEAT. This standard has been around for a few years for computing products, but is just going to be introduced in January of 2013 for printing products, which is where I work. This standard has a bronze, silver, gold level achievement that says that we have to meet certain criteria in order to hit these different levels. Now, do you remember when I was talking about the DeskJet 2345? Well, some people reacted to the fact that we were so proud of our 83% recycled plastic in that product, and they said, yeah, but why not 100%? And so this standard helps us to demonstrate our leadership and our innovation in this area, because even 25% recycled plastic is considered a significant achievement and helps reach gold level. And it helps HP demonstrate how we're leaders in the area of using recycled plastic in our products. So now that I've talked about commitment, I'd like to talk about tool number 3, and that is using environmental sustainability as a source of innovation. As I've mentioned, we've had a long history of working toward environmental commitment and environmental sustainability at Hewlett-Packard. And we've been running a supplies recycling program for years where we offer supplies recycling, essentially your ink cartridges or your toner cartridges. We'll take them back and then we'll recycle them. But for many years, we had what happened to that plastic when we got it back was that it would be turned into things like flower pots or decking material, park benches, other kinds of downcycled uses for plastics. And we had an engineer who said, well, how couldn't we do something different with that plastic material? Couldn't we use the recycled plastic from our old cartridges and put it into our new cartridges again? This was not actually an easy achievement because the material is quite downgraded when using that old plastic and trying to put it into new. Just like with the DeskJet 2345, when you're using recycled materials, it has different material properties, and it's difficult to take that material and just use it as an easy substitute. And so at HP, it all started with a washing machine. And someone brought in an old beat-up washing machine from home, brought it into the HP office, and started taking the recycled plastics, or the recycled cartridges from our Planet Partners recycling program and washing those cartridges in the washing machine. And they were hoping that by doing so, they could start to learn how to get that material processed so that it could become a new original HP print cartridge again. And so by today, that old washing machine has now been replaced with patented, industrial-grade, large kinds of recycling processing equipment. And we've been learning how to take that material and put it into new. We had to work with a supplier, Jean-Luc Laverne, who would help us, of Laverne Plastics, to help figure out how to adjust the material properties to basically make a secret sauce in order to make the material useful again in a new original print cartridge. And it was really the work of that one engineer, Dean Miller, as a translator to think about how he could take this plastic from old cartridges and turn it into new again. Today, we have a robust closed-loop recycling process for our ink cartridges. And we take the cartridges back from our customers, we shred them, we separate the plastics from the metals and other materials, and then we take the plastics and we combine it with the material from recycled PET bottles, like water bottles and other soda bottles. And then we make that material into new original HP print cartridges. And so what started with a crazy idea, an old washing machine, and a few batches of print cartridges has now become a robust program where we've produced 1 billion original HP print cartridges with recycled plastic. And there's two key things here from this lesson or from this program that I'd like to make sure I mention. The first is that it takes customers in the first place returning those cartridges to us or recycling their plastic bottles in order to allow us to have a program where we can have recycled plastic in our products. it also requires commitment from a company, because the time that it took to develop from the first washing machine to now was almost, I think it was more than a decade. And so we needed to have continuing commitment to support this program over time before anyone knew whether it would ever be successful. So now I'd like to talk about initiating and leveraging valuable partnerships. As I mentioned, it's our role as translators to think about the data that we have and interpret it in ways that we can make use of it in our business. And one of the things that we've been learning as we've been conducting life cycle assessments of our products is that the use phase of the product is very important to the overall impact of printing products. That is, that one of the largest places where we can reduce environmental impact, or one of the largest areas of impact, is when a customer has our product. And we've been thinking about, well, how can we influence our customers to reduce their environmental impact by looking at by focusing on some of the tools. And it was just at that time that Universal Studios came to us and approached us about a potential opportunity to sponsor a movie called The Lorax. The movie is based on a book called The Lorax, and it is a story that many of you may be familiar with. This is a book by Dr. Seuss that talks about reducing environmental impact. And both the movie and the book end with a quote that says, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." Now, a little sidebar. In my family, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I can't get through this book without getting teary and choking up. And so my daughter is always rolling her eyes and laughing at me because I have to turn the book over to my husband to finish reading the book. And I guess that's the tree hugger side of me coming out. But anyways, I digress. Universal Studios came to us and said, would you sponsor this movie called The Lorax? And we thought about this issue that I was mentioning earlier, that we need to think about how to influence consumers to reduce their environmental impact. We need to think about how we can get them motivated to reduce the impact of the overall product. And so we came up with a campaign concept called Every Inkling Makes a Difference. And what that means is simply that when customers choose big or small actions, like recycling a can or carpooling or giving up a vehicle so that they can use mass transit in order to reduce their environmental impact, that's an inkling. In our business, it's things like recycling print cartridges. And so we took this campaign idea and we brought it to life through a bunch of different activities. We had a Facebook page where we had a contest. Customers answered a series of questions about printing as well as other environmental activities. And if they finished all of these questions, they received a badge on their Facebook page. 3 badges, and we donated $3 to the World Wildlife Fund. We also had print ads and digital ads inspiring customers to come to one location where we had a website which gave customers all of the information about how they could take action to reduce the environmental impact of printing. And we focused on 3 key areas, they being to recycle print cartridges through the Planet Partners program, to use responsibly sourced paper, and also to choose a printer designed with the environment in mind. And also to bring to life the real importance of double-sided printing, we had the world's first 2-sided website. And so we found that we received great engagement through this program. Customers really responded, and I think it actually surprised some of the business team about how inspired customers were to learn about environmental impact and how to do something about it. But one of the key things that one of the key parts or the key tools was this partnership idea. We partnered with Universal Studios. We partnered with Scholastic Education, the educational materials company, And they helped us develop curriculum that we shared in the local schools. Tens of thousands of teachers and families downloaded educational curriculum to talk about environmental topics. And then as well, we hosted these panels, a series of panel discussions, where instead of just holding a press conference, we invited our colleagues from the World Wildlife Fund, from the Forest Stewardship Council, which are some nonprofit organizations we work with for a long time. We also invited the Seventh Generation, which is a brand which had very like-minded ideals about how to reduce environmental impact. And at these it wasn't really a press conference, at these events we invited bloggers, media, press, analysts, and others to come and engage with us to talk about how to reduce environmental impact. And we invited them to bring their families so that we could then go to a movie afterwards to see a pre-screening show of the Lorax. And we found that this was a great tool any company could use, big or small, in order to think about how to address environmental impact and come up with mutual goals. Now, I've been talking for about 20 minutes now or so, and you've been listening to my accent. And you still may not know that originally I am from New Jersey. Born and raised in New Jersey, I was devastated by the hurricane and the flooding that happened in my home state recently. And while I was sitting out on a patio outside on an unseasonably warm November day in Boise, Idaho, I was talking to family and friends back in New Jersey who had lost homes, who were dealing with days on end of lack of electricity, road closures, gasoline shortages, and the like. Never before had it been quite so real to my friends and family that climate change is a real issue that we have to deal with. And I see it as our role as translators to to think about how we can translate what's going on in our world and identify key steps that we can take. We understand the environmental considerations, and we also understand business needs. We can bring these two groups together, and it's really never been more important than it is today to think about how to do so to address climate change. I offer you the 4 tools that I've shared today: understanding customer needs and addressing them, committing, using environmental sustainability as an innovation driver, and finally, initiating and leveraging partnerships in order to focus on how we can drive ourselves forward to get serious about addressing climate change. It's that simple and it's that complex. But I really believe that we can do this because at HP we know that every inkling makes a difference. Thank you very much.